Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. It depends on what time and which place are you watching this podcast or you listening this podcast. I'm Niccolò, as always, and welcome Diplomaticast, so the podcast of geopolitics, but not only that. And again, I would like to thank Tvesha, my honorable guest, for being today for the second time on my podcast. And Tvesha, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Nicolo. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. I'm great too. Thank you so much. Before we start introducing the topic, I would like to update my audience that yesterday I got my license to teach Italian and English language at school, in Italian schools. So congrats to me.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so the topic of today is climate change and also the Agenda 2030, which is very important. Actually it's an objective. It's a goal that we are very close to reach. And me and Tvesha today are gonna talk about it in a very simple way. So, okay, so Tvesha, first of all, I would like you can introduce yourself to my audience. Please go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Tvesha Thakur. I am from India and I'm a youth advocate for climate change as well as education. And today I'm here to talk about topics that we often forget to talk about with the ongoing wars and the ongoing problems with the world. I think we forget about things such as education and the right to education. So I hope this conversation is fruitful enough for you all to know about more things. And yeah, thank you so much for inviting me to speak.
No, the pressure is mine. So, okay, I would like to start from the Agenda 2030 because, like as already mentioned, we are getting very closer to the final date, namely 2030. And my opinion concerning about that is that we made a lot of progresses during the year, but recently I'm kind of seeing. I kind of relucting. So because of our politicians, because of our leaders, like despite the technologies, the modern technologies that are advancing our way of living, our lifestyle, but despite that, I think my personal opinion is that we have a lot to do. We have still a lot to do, and so
Hmm.
that's why I'd like to ask you, Tvesha, what's your opinion about that? Do you think were there progresses, or do you think there's still more to do?
Well, if I talk about from the perspective of an Indian, I think there is a lot of work to do. 2030 is just in about 3 to 4 years, and I don't think we have the ample amount of policies or particularly, the education that we provide people to get to know more about these sustainable goals. No poverty, zero hunger, education, all of these sustainable goals alongside the ongoing wars are not at all possible from my point of view. Because when you talk about wars, it creates refugees. It creates displaced people, displaced from their homes. The people are dying from poverty, from hunger. They're not getting access to education. People are getting mentally tortured from the ongoing circumstances of the world. And I think 2030 goals are an amazing, agenda to be very particular. But achieving them in such a short period of time, according to me, is not possible currently. India also has a lot of schemes regarding education. They are updating their education policy day to day with, the ongoing trends, inculcating, AI as well as new technology into education. That is a step forward, but I think we're still forgetting about the poor people. We cannot reach the poor people enough with education. People who can afford education are going to get educated somehow, right? But refugees, poor people, those who don't even know the importance of education, they won't be able to get education unless and until the government helps them. And particularly, I think we will reach that sometime, but 2030 is just a very small bracket.
No, absolutely. In fact, like from your perspective, there are many good points. Also, from my perspective, which is the Italian one, the European one, And as you already mentioned many times during the last podcast, but also during your meetings with Vartavox, I had the
Mm-hmm.
honor to meet the Estonian ambassador, and he personally took part in the last COP30, which took place in Brazil. And the idea, so the scenario was pretty sad because many people from my audience know that the most important countries in the world concerning the climate change, but also the use of emissions of CO2, not only, such as United States, China, and India, didn't take part in the COP. And so this is a proof. This is a statement that uh, humankind is kind of struggling to reach an agreement, a full agreement. And you said correctly, there are also wars, which of course defeat people, so bring people into a catastrophic scenario, but also cultures, people, countries. The first thing that comes up to my mind is the current situation in Bangladesh, but in
Mm-hmm.
particular in the island of Tuvalu, which is completely far away, isolated from the general conception of the United Nations. In fact, I remember the Prime Minister of the island of Tuvalu, which took his speech in the ocean, like almost covered by his knees. And so that is a strong proof that climate change exists and we have to deal with it. In particular, maybe I would say in my case, maybe when I'm gonna be a grandfather, I'm gonna maybe see the results of climate change, but my nephews and my children will definitely see the results for sure. And also, I would like to focus on other scenarios, for example, the migration scenarios, which everyone tends to forget or to ignore, because like if the level of the water gets higher and higher through the years, many people are forced to escape from their home country and their whole home. And so, yeah, this is
Mm-hmm.
a very huge topic. What's your opinion about that?
Absolutely. Talking about climate change as a whole, it is one of the things that I think every single person should be worrying about currently because we can feel the effects of climate change. It is not something that is confined in a room or is being changed, right? We can feel the heat waves coming around. We can feel the climate changing all of a sudden. For example, in India, currently, we are having immense, hot days over here, which is not at all normal for a place like India. And our country is one of the most diverse countries in terms of geography. At the same time, you can see snow and you can see, hot days, you have rain in a part of the country, and so and so. So I think climate change is affecting countries a lot, and people are paying very less, attention on that. Specifically, people who have just passed their youth, I would say, people from 30s to 40s to 50s, they are not well aware of the fact that the consequences of these things will be faced by the future generations. We might survive this climate change, we might survive it, but can pretty surely say if we do not control it right now, our future generations will not be able to survive this. I mean, the UN also declared a few days ago that the world is officially going into a water bankruptcy. And all of that combined as a whole, whether it be water, climate, ecology, every single thing is interrelated, right? There is no environment without water, and only water is not also enough for the humans to survive. I was watching this video the other day, a short film by a very nice creator, and they were discussing about how dinosaurs were killed and how we are, gonna get killed through the wars and stuff. And they were discussing a very important topic about how the Earth is never going to get destroyed. Because, see, the meteors came on Earth, they destroyed every single species, almost every single species living during the dinosaur age. But the Earth did not get destroyed, right? So what we are destroying right now is not the earth. The earth has been destroyed many times. It has recovered itself many times too. It is humans who we are destroying. It is humanity in itself. because we are the ones who are getting affected by climate change, by bad water supply. We are slowly eroding, right? And there is this very famous quote in our standard ninth books here in India. It goes, we have borrowed our environment from our future generations. Our previous generations have given the environment to us because they preserved it. And we have to preserve it in the same way for our future generations because we basically have borrowed it from them. We do not have any right to destroy all of the things that they are meant to see. The species of wildlife that are getting destroyed right now, we do not have any right to destroy that. And our future generations have every single right to, get to know about their ecology, get to see the ecology actually. The environment that is getting slowly eroded away. They have every single right to see that, to enjoy that. But honestly, if we continue living the way that we are currently living, it won't be possible at all.
No, yeah, absolutely agree. In fact, uh, like also, I always think about our leaders, not only in my case the Italian one, Giorgia Meloni, but also the European, the American leaders, but also from all over the countries. And one thing we can say for sure, like everyone sees, is that most of them, the majority of them, is higher than 60 years old, or even more. And so this is very interesting to focus on because like the main idea that many people think is that they are too old, they don't care about the future, and so they don't do anything. But it's not that. The problem is that in my honest opinion, the leaders they want for the moment they want to try other solutions because the problem is that the humankind as itself is very lazy, so they don't want to find the right solution, the difficult solution, but they want to avoid it, they want to overcome it in many ways. For example, like Elon Musk recently reached the trillion, the first human ever to reach the $1 trillion, like to be the trillionaire, first trillionaire in the history of humankind. And
Exactly.
yeah, if you think about it, like he has the resources, he has the power to change countries or even maybe continents, like providing water, providing new resources, new technologies, and so on. The idea is that they are focusing on reaching other lands, such as the moon and Mars. But this is gonna be another story. Maybe we can discuss in another day, another podcast. Like in
Absolutely. Like for me, having our first trillionaire before we have gotten rid of world poverty is actually very concerning because he has those kind of assets which can buy countries, literally. And if we talk about, to be very particular, him using the resources, then I do not think we actually need to fund billionaires and trillionaires, right? And if we talk about Elon Musk, to be very particular, he has been very active in the US politics too. But I think it's about time that people realize these things. Most people don't even know how much a trillion is. They do not understand the importance of getting to know that Elon Musk is a trillionaire now, and that is quite concerning. Because when you look at people, you expect them to work. For example, you said our ministers are working towards it, whether it be Honorable Georgia Meloni or our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. Everyone is working towards the sustainable goals. But the change which we are hoping lies in how much we do. Because as the civilians, as the citizens of our country, we have a lot of duties. And I think sometimes we fail to perform them. And it's not that we are expected to do something huge. Even if we do just as much as not using AI for a day, we can save gallons and gallons of water, right? And not even just water, fresh drinking water. Because I think I was reading this Instagram post a few days ago in which Steve Jobs, or I cannot exactly recall the name, said that humans are using too much water and that won't be beneficial to humanity. Using that water in AI centers, AI databases, that will be something that is going to benefit humans. And that is concerning because you are putting development and software engineering over human lives. And that is not at all acceptable for me, because humans have to be developed, obviously, but developing does not mean losing humanity in itself, right?
No, no, yeah. In fact, like you anticipated what I wanted to say about the AI and the data centers, which became like suddenly became the another problem for climate change, but also in terms of wasting the resources. Because yeah, you said correctly, the amount of water needed to recharge the data centers. In fact, like if you imagine, like just to use the AI like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude, like only to generate a couple of images, they need millions of liters of water. And like yesterday, I also watched a video about an Italian YouTuber which is called Project to Happiness, which is like happiness project in English. And he went to Bangladesh, in a community of Bangladesh, which escaped from Myanmar for unfortunately, for war reasons and discrimination, racism in particular. And the problem is that this refugee camp hosts almost 1 million people, many women, many children, and many other people. And so the problem, they like only once a day they have access to water, to fresh water, of course. And this proves how hard it is for NGOs, but also international organizations, to provide these people with water, with food, and other things. And also, like, I want to ask you, what's your idea? What's the future of AI, and how can we put together this idea, but in order to find solutions? Like, do you think AI or technology can be useful to find solutions in order to resolve climate changes?
Well, thinking about it from my experience, I have said it a lot of times on my channel before too, that the main problem with us humans using AI is that once we think something is making our lives easier, we start overusing it. And the main thing that is destroying our earth is not simply using AI, it is the overconsumption of AI. If I, for example, use AI today to type out, for example, a letter, that is helping me do something. That I believe is quite useful. But me using it to generate an image of my dog dressed as a magician is not at all useful. The AI trends that are coming up, and Google being totally AI now, every single thing is becoming AI, and that is not at all useful for human beings. It is making us less and less creative, because I have seen people around me, my fellow classmates, my friends, they have become so dependent on AI that they use it for every single purpose, and because of that they have lost this sense of creativity of their own. And people who actually genuinely write stuff from their own side are getting blamed of using AI, right? So I think we should be teaching children about not over consuming AI. And science has always developed human beings, Mr. Nicolo. It has always helped us, right? But now we have reached a stage where I think it is not helping us anymore, but it's destroying us, our future, the future of humanity, as well as the earth. So, science is good as long as it does not harm the nature. And I always believe that there are solutions, there are other ways to use or, generate new technologies. We don't always need fresh water to treat those data centers. I am not a science student, I'm a humanities student, but there is always a way out. 100 years ago, no one believed that phones would be there, right? But humanity, humans using their own brains, made something that we now use for making our lives easier. So I believe if scientists do research on this, if they do find more, well, stuff to, not use fresh water, to be very particular, for cooling data centers, it will be amazing for the humanity, as we will get a tool that helps us, makes us much more, makes the stuff for us much more faster while not destroying our nature.
Yeah, no, in fact, like concerning this, every technology ever made by humanity and humankind was very helpful and very useful. Actually, like if you consider the invention of the smartphone, it was a revolution for all of us. Like it changed completely our way of living, how we communicate, and how we behave with each other, how we behave each other. And also, I was thinking about humankind as its behavior because in Italy we have a way to say, like, which is a lupo a lupo. It means that you can do many things so many times or repeat the same actions a lot of time, but before you reach the no turning point, you go ahead without stopping. So this is my opinion about humanity and climate change. Unfortunately, until we don't reach the no turning point, which like scientists all every day changes their opinion. It's in 1 year or 10 years or 1 century. We don't know it, but uh, there's one truth, one reality. Like in the future, we're gonna reach it, whatever.
Hmm.
Like in any case, and we have to be ready. Like when we reach it, we have to be ready to find immediate solutions because if you don't prevent it, it's gonna be even more difficult to solve a dramatic situation, also an impossible one.
Exactly, and AI should never replace humanity because human empathy, human creativity, critical thinking is something that only humans can do. And we have created technology. I have read this beautiful quote somewhere which said, I use technology so that it can do the actual work and I can focus on art and creativity. Not that I can focus on the corporate and critical work and it make my, art and creative stuff. Because artists nowadays are being degraded, and I wanted to highlight this point while talking about AI. Big companies who can afford graphic designers, who can afford actors to act, who can afford sets, are using AI nowadays to make their ads. I was recently viewing this ad of Samsung, and it had this AI generated ad for promoting its new phone. And that made me wonder that if they have the budget, if they have the money to actually hire new actors and solve unemployment to some extent as well as show us something that is made by actual human beings, why are big companies using AI? Because small companies usually give the excuse of not having enough budget, but companies like Samsung have enormous budgets, and them using AI based videos, models, and not giving enough credit to the arts out there, the creative thinking ability people, is actually very concerning. And I think we should raise our voice against this.
No, no, yeah. In fact, as I said before, it's for me it's a matter of laziness. So human is lazy for his nature, but at the same time, it has the courage and it has the capabilities to find immediate solutions in order to in order to reach a better quality of life or to live better. Like we have many witnesses from the ancient times to nowadays. So human today we live in wonderful apartment, we live in wonderful villas. We don't live anymore in the streets or we don't live in the forest as we used to do before. But yeah, like I also would like to move to I would like to come back to the topic of COP, like which kind of it replaced the UN meetings concerning the climate change. Like I'm looking for, like there are many uh, tries, there are many things that our leaders are trying to do in order. I don't know why, because I remember exactly the Paris Agreement, like in 2014, more or less, and I consider it the best objective, the best goal that humankind reached in the last centuries. I think concerning the climate change, of course, like because it was the first time that almost every country in the world agreed about finding solutions, finding equalities concerning this problem. because for the first time I saw the humanity as one thing, and they all agree about finding finally a new solution altogether. Like you are very young, so I think you were a child at that time, but you know, of course, you made your research. You are very well cultured, and so what's your idea about this Paris Agreement? Like, do you think we're gonna see something like that in the next future, or we lost completely that passion or that idea of cohesion?
Well, I'll be honest, I'm not much well aware about the Paris Agreement, but from your perspective, I understood it being a cooperation between a lot of states about, you know, getting together for humanity as a whole. And I think, yes, we can see an agreement like that in the future if we think about it very critically, because countries are evolving, and very precisely nowadays the citizens of the countries are demanding younger politicians who they can relate to, and politicians who know that change is required, but change is required while taking into context your citizens, the amount of people in your country. And yeah, for example, most countries' youth ministers are people who are in their 50s or 60s. And I don't understand that, because a youth minister might, obviously, I'm not questioning the ability of the youth ministers who are old to do their jobs. But I'm just saying that youth ministers should actually be people who the youth can connect with, who can understand what exactly is this current generation going through.
No, yeah, like in fact, I completely agree about this point. And actually, like, unfortunately, it's not so easy finding good people, but also finding well instructed people about climate change, because you don't have only to be conscious about the problem of climate change, its consequences and its actions, but also you have to deal with um, like a tool with a system, a political system which doesn't allow you to the proper actions. In fact,
Hmm.
like the good thing is that there are many simulations in the UN committee. Like for example, in Italy, we have many organizations which plan kind of meetings, like in presence to the UN building in New York, in order like to let the students, but also young adults, about this problem, about this topic. And I think there are many solutions. There are many things, positive things about that. Like I always,
Exactly. We can even see the India EU trade agreement, the FTA that happened recently, which was called the mother of all trade agreements. And if we connect that with the Paris Agreement, we can see that the EU India agreement also had this particular section where they talked about the carbon emissions and how they need to be very limited for the MNCs or any small businesses to be trading with the EU. And things like that actually impact people a lot, because you make them understand that saving cost while damaging the environment is not something that is acceptable as a whole. And I think government should take stricter steps towards people reducing using unsustainable ways to make their products or make their services, just so that they can get out cheaper. But investing money on sustainable goals is not something that is going to waste. That money is you investing it into something that is much more, benefit for the society. And I'm not saying that all factories are very nice and they don't destroy the environment. I have personally seen companies and factories destroy the environment, but I've also seen them reconstructing it. For example, if a company is building electricity, it is obvious that they need to use coal for building electricity, and that is a natural resource which is getting eroded slowly, right? And but what I am also reading about is that they are using their resources. They have particular budgets allocated in their yearly annual finance reports for sustainable action goals in which they use the ashes made left out of those coals for better purposes. They make bricks out of that, they construct buildings out of that those ashes, and that is something that everyone needs to understand. See, development will destroy. Development, whether it be a financial development, an economical development, or development of industries, industries do destroy environment. It just matters how well you are reconstructing the environment after destroying all of those things.
No, yeah, in fact, like it's part of a cycle. Like in the past, we used to see countries, factories, companies like produce and destroy, produce and put away, produce and don't recycle. But like fortunately, luckily, like from since a couple of decades, this trend completely changed, reversed. So now companies are obliged to recycle the materials they don't use it anymore. They are forced to do like a green economy. In fact, like the most important topic or the most important thing we are looking nowadays is the green economy. Like our country is green in its own and how it's seen by the others. Like concerning Europe, there are, like we all know, there are many countries that are doing an amazing job. I will mention the Scandinavian countries such as Sweden, Norway, Denmark. They always had this kind of approach to do good actions and also to have a good a good cities, clean cities, far away from rubbish and so on. Like I would like also to focus on my country, Italy. So the problem with my country is that we are very aware about pollution, climate change, and green economy. But the fact that Italy is the second or the first oldest country in the world, and so like can you imagine having many old people that when they were young they didn't have any idea about this. Like they never heard about climate change, they never heard about green economy, or just the conception to recycle.
Sure.
I was saying I was saying that Italy, concerning Italy and the problematic of climate change and green economy, is that our generation, Italy has to deal with the old generation, which of course didn't have any clue about this problem. So I was saying that old people like my grandparents, for example, they never heard of green economy, green cities, recycling, or waste pollution. So it's very hard to find a meeting point between the younger and the old generation, in particular in the European countries like Italy, because
Mhm.
they don't have the conception of this problematic. And also I completely understand them, because if you are 80 or 78 years old, of course you don't care anymore because you did your life and you reached everything possible. So what can be your importance, or what can be your idea about that? Luckily, there are many old people that understand the problem, that help their grandchildren, get their grandsons to focus on this specific thematic. But like, for example, other countries such as United States, which I consider like I'm thinking there's a falling, a downfalling of the culture of United States itself, but not the culture of the country, like its history and what did they do in the past, but the education. Like United States is dealing with a huge problem of education, because people like young teenagers or young adults, they don't understand what's the problem of climate change. Most of them, I think, they don't even know the 13 SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals. So, what they can do in order to help or to give their contribution? I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, also there are many negationists in the current United States government, such as Kennedy, and which I'm very impressed of because his father was like he was considered one of the most correct and good president that the United States ever had. So yeah, Tvesha, go ahead, please.
Absolutely. Firstly, I think you are very true about the fact that cultural differences do occur between age gaps, the generation gaps that we have. India has one of the most amount of youths in the world. And I think we face the problem very often because people who are older, they have lived in a different kind of a world. They have lived in a world where a notebook was only 1 rupee. And now we're living in a world where we get notebooks for 200 or 300 rupees. So yeah, they have faced these generation changes and most of them are trying very, very hard. And honestly, Mr. Nicola, I think the older generations, or I can say the generations of our grandparents, are people who care about nature the most because they have lived with nature, whether it be in their childhood, their adulthood. I am from Himachal Pradesh in India, and it is an amazing, amazing state with a lot of mountains. My grandparents have always lived with apple orchards and they have built their jobs, their lives around nature. And I think particularly if I look at my family and I look at my grandparents as a whole, then I think they are more, of climate activists than I am because they cannot accept the fact that a person will throw plastic outside, outside on the roads because they're very health conscious as well as they're really conscious about the environment because they've always lived with the environment. And I think the current generation is not worrying about climate right now because they've never lived with the environment, right? I think you get my point because the younger generations that are currently being born or people who are younger than 5 years old right now, they have been surrounded by city life. They have never been to nature. They have never been exposed to the, you know, easiness and the freeness of nature. And how do we expect them to save something that they have never experienced, right? They need to get out more. They need to get to know the earth much more better. And I think when we talk of climate change and India, to be very particular, we face a very unique challenge. We are one of the world's fastest growing economies, and we have over 1.4 billion people to cater to. So our priority is not only reducing emissions, but it is also making sure that all of those people, all of those 1.4 plus billion plus people get adequate electricity, they get healthcare, they have economic opportunities, right? So yeah, people have access to electricity, education, healthcare, everything, but with such a huge population to cater to, I think India is doing a good job, and not by 2030, but soon enough, maybe by 2035 or maybe by 2040, we will see a change in all of this.
No, no, yeah, in fact, absolutely agree. And I would like also to thank you for your witness because it's very fascinating. Like, in fact, like it depends from the background that each of us has. For example, I come from a background where my parents are teachers, they are professors, and so they have a clear idea about the problem of climate change, and they taught to their students the SDG actions. In fact, like I am considered very lucky because I had the opportunity also to witness the meeting with the Estonian ambassador, but also to assist to the COP30 online through devices. Yeah, and also as I said before, I watch on TV the Paris Agreement signed by all the leaders of the world, and I mean it's very wonderful. Like if you think about that. Also, another point that I would like to discuss with you is the future of some communities that live, for example, in the Pacific Ocean, but not only. Previously, I mentioned the island of Tuvalu in the Pacific Ocean and its strong community, which is dealing with a problem that like it's almost impossible to avoid. And but it's not the only case. In fact, all the highlands located in the Pacific, but all around the planet, are facing this problem. And the main thing people tend to ignore or don't to or tend to forget is the flux. Is the migration flux that is going to bring many and many issues to local people. For example, like the first thing that comes up to my mind is Tuvalu people are forced to move to Australia or to Papua New Guinea or
Hmm.
to Indonesia and so on. And I was wondering what's your opinion about that. Is this migration gonna be a good thing in order to let people coexist to help each other, or maybe can bring other problems?
Well, if I think about the sea level rising that you mentioned, first of all, I think the sea levels rising right now is one of the clearest indications that climate change is not something that we just read about in books, but it's something that we are currently living in. But we often fail to realize that. And talking about migration, I think every single country has their own culture, they have their own kind of people. And mixing of cultures is something that is very common nowadays. People from India coming to the United States are mixing in the culture of United States. Many people from the UK coming to India are getting indulged into this culture and mixing too. But when I talk about illegal migration, to be very particular, not the migration that happens in between the middle classes or the rich people, but the migration that is forced. For example, the migration that is happening in Bangladesh or in the Nawaribi camp of Sudan or Kenya. When I talk about those in particular, the people over there are living in absolute disasters. They don't have access to health care. They don't have clean water to drink. They are facing such problems that are literally cancelling out their basic human rights of right to food, right to security, and everything like that. So migration is an amazing concept, I think, and I don't believe in this concept of people not going into each other's countries because of conflicts. Because we are humans, we are animals too, right? And animals, we have always seen animals migrating from one place to other in order to survive. And people from one country to other, they migrate in order to survive for better opportunities, better healthcare, better food, right? So yeah, migration is a beautiful thing that happens in this world, but forced migration due to war or due to climate change, like you had mentioned, is something that is not benefiting the country at all. Because those people who are living as the migrants, they have no right. They don't have a right to go back to their home country, and the country they are or the state they are currently based in does not give them enough rights as they do to the other people. So yeah, I recently interviewed a lot of migrants from the Kenyan refugee camp, where I'm currently taking classes on mental health and public speaking. And one thing that I found very striking was that all of them had just one thing to say, and that they were positive. When I asked them one question, Mr. Nicola, it was that how do you see your future? How do you expect to live in a place like this? And everyone had one simple answer, and they had God is good and that He will help us. They had this faith, they had this positiveness in their minds that actually empowered me too. Because we are living in metropolitan cities, we're living in places where all of us have our own individual lives. We have no hope left, absolutely no. We have a very particular schedule. We go to the office, come back to our house, we do our work, and the next day the routine continues. But for them, every single thing is just unexpected. One day they are sleeping in their houses, and the other their homes are getting bombed. The other their parents are getting killed. I met a lot of children who were orphaned because of the ongoing war or the food crisis. And it absolutely broke me to understand that forced migration is something that is absolutely, not something that should happen in this world. Becoming refugees in another country or in your own home country, becoming refugees in that is not something any human would ever want.
No, yeah, exactly. So the main problem is that, like, when things like that will happen in the future, like, also the humankind as a species itself will rewrite completely the history of humankind. So the laws will have to be rewritten, so have to be changed. Because like when a place completely disappeared, in this case we are talking about islands, but also some cities will disappear, unfortunately. And the problem is that when there's no land anymore, you are obliged to go somewhere. And in the place where you are hosted, you feel guilty because you are occupying its land, like occupying metaphorically its land. But you are also obliged to adapt, to assimilate to the culture of the place that is hosting you. So like apart the risk of losing your own land, but the main problem is that we will witness the disappearing of some civilizations and some cultures. Because like for example, if I consider I always do the same example. So if we consider the Tuvalu people, if they move to Australia, they are obliged to learn English and to adapt to Australian laws and to Australian culture, to go to Australian schools, to learn Australian history, and also to adapt to their lifestyle. And the problem is that, like the next generations that we will born there, that will marry with people with Australian people and so on, they will lose their own origin and their own culture. In fact, like I would like also to talk about the main domain, which I'm very good at it, which is languages. In fact, like in the past, humanity used to have almost 15,000 languages on the planet. And like according to a recent report of 2025, the languages that exist nowadays are more or less 7,000. So can you imagine, Tvesha, half of them were completely disappeared, eliminated from the history. And the fact that this migration will bring another loss of languages and civilizations.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally on this part. And I also wanted to share a short story about how I started my journey in climate change advocacy. I was not someone who used to read a lot about, climate change or climate advocacy to be very particular. Um, Recently in 2023, we had 91 cloudbursts in my home state in Himachal Pradesh. Obviously, all of the things happening over there were because of climate change. And during those 91 cloudbursts, my family, my land was affected too, and we lost at least 15 acres of our land. And many of my family members were also sadly killed in those incidents. That made me actually wonder whether we as humans are paying enough attention to things like these. I am a victim of, not having education at all too, because I was not aware of climate change at all. I was reading about the climate, the environment in my science books, but I never had this concept of climate change in my books. And that is why I got to know about climate change when I was personally affected by it. And as a consequence of my land being lost in those disastrous floods and rains, we had to shift to the cities. Like, not me, but my maternal house, my mother's maternal house. They had to shift to the city. And one consequence of shifting towards the city for better opportunities, for better jobs, is that you lose your culture. You cannot talk in a language anymore. And the people who are coming, I can speak my homeland's language, but it is not necessary that my children will be speaking those languages. I have made a documentary on this particular part, that is the Gaddis and their voices. Because the Gaddis are sheep herders, they are nomads, they have no homes at all. And yet they have succeeded at preserving their culture. Because I think people preserve their culture. I have read about this a lot. People can preserve their cultures because they live at one place. They write about their culture, they write about their languages and every single thing. But for nomads like the Gaddis, for people who are not staying at one single place, it is very hard to preserve their culture at one place, right? And while researching on it, I found this very striking and harsh truth, and that was that people speak their language, but they don't know how to write their languages. Even if we go 2 to 3 generations back, people who are older than 90 years old, they did not have any idea that the language that they spoke can also be written down. And I researched on the particular language that I'm talking about over here, that is Takri script's Gaddi language. And then I went ahead and educated people of that state that this language you're speaking right now can be written too. And the government of the particular states should take initiative to, preserve the cultures in such way. Because Mr. Nicolo, we might go out, I might change my country someday, I might go out in order to find a job. But it is my responsibility as a part of the Indian culture, as a part of the Gadi culture, to preserve that culture. Because, like you mentioned, the 15,000 languages have just been reduced to 7,000 officially recognized languages. And India, being one of the most diverse countries when we talk about languages or culture, is something that we face every single day. The most significant thing that I can see right now is the Britishers that came into India. They made our culture shameful, right? Nowadays, people in India are ashamed if they do not know how to speak English. English, I might agree, is an international language and everyone should know it. But that does not mean that by speaking English, you will be ashamed of your own language, the language that you spoke from the very beginning of your life. That is something that I find really negative. I might speak English, but that does not mean I don't speak Gaddi or I don't speak Hindi. I am connected to my roots as well as using English as a medium to connect with people. For example, how I'm connecting with you right now. But that does not mean that I'll be speaking only in English and forgetting totally about my roots, right? So while we humans play a huge role in preserving our cultures, the government can also help in it by inculcating activities or inculcating these things into the syllabus so that the current coming generations also talk about things like these.
No, indeed. I have a Turkish friend, like her level of English was not so good, but despite that, I was very available to help her improving her level of English, and I didn't have any problem communicating with her. So it's just a matter of be patient and also be available for the other one to help, also to support, which is very important. In fact, I totally agree with you about the fact that if you don't speak English, you are not considered a well instructed person. That's not true, because like Italy is the perfect example how everyone doesn't speak properly English, but at the same time we are very respected all over, all over the countries. Like Italy, like Italians, they're not so good, and I'm very honest. We are not so good in English. Unfortunately, we are maybe the worst in Europe. But despite that, when we go abroad, our way of, our behavior, our way of communicating helps us to be understood by everyone. And I
Exactly.
mean,
And I am
this is
actually very inspired by the Italians for doing that because I was recently listening to the speech of Honorable Mrs. Giorgia Meloni, and she spoke totally in Italian. She did not feel ashamed at all for not speaking in English. So I think one of the reasons why we as Indians are not able to do that is because of the British era that we had, like I previously mentioned. Because they made us feel ashamed of our culture, of our language, right? And exactly because of that, when our ministers go out and speak in Hindi, we do not appreciate it. Not me, but the society as a whole does not appreciate it because they have resonated the term English language with being educated. And that is not at all true because people are well educated in every single language. You speaking Italian as well as English is something that helps you. English helps you, but Italian, speaking Italian is something that is connected to your roots and your cultural identity. And you would never want to lose that. Neither do I want to lose it. But currently, looking at the situation of my country, I think the government needs to work much more towards inculcating our language, the Hindi language, into much more work areas. And not just the Hindi language, the Tamil, Telugu, every single language from the northeast, from the northern side, because we have more than 21 officially recognized languages just in India. So we do use English to communicate with each other too. But that does not mean that we forget about our roots or our cultures.
No, yeah, if, like what you mentioned right now is a problem that is affecting many countries, in particular also in Europe. The problem of being affected by other cultures. That like most the majority of the people tend to think that if you learn another culture, if you speak another language, it can be a symptom of conquest, a symptom of being under pressure, also under their law and their custom. But also, I think, on the contrary, it's welcoming other cultures because you want to learn, you want to open your mind to other things, you want to
Hmm,
share also your values and your cultures to other people, other countries. This
absolutely.
is collaboration. Instead, people and many leaders think they are doing the opposite thing. They tend to install, they tend to put the fear and also the fear to people in order to let them using or doing bad things. Unfortunately, I think it's an action that is quite developing and quite spreading all around the world. Like United States with the concept of the great make America great again, or in Italy recently in the last months there's this term. My audience in Italian know for sure. It's called remigrazione, which in English is remigration, like in United Kingdom is already been used many times this term. Like it's like taking a person, of course different from the English one or the Italian one in this case, and throw him away, like put him back or let him back to his country of origin. And most of the time its country of origin is inaccessible because of wars, or you cannot live there because there are civil wars, or the conditions are completely far away from the human ones.
Exactly. And when we talk of language, to be very particular, if we go back in history, language was something that people resonated with as having an identity, right? Whether it be the French Revolution or the Prussian War that happened. The first thing that the people did to conquer another country was imply their language on the people living there, right? There's this beautiful story on this by Alphonse Daudet, The Last Lesson. And the lesson very beautifully tells us about how language plays an important part in our language. Well, during the Prussian War, the French were, forced to learn German. And that is something that we should be concerned about. Like you said, language, learning other languages is something beautiful, is something that all of us should do. I personally speak 5 languages. And I do that because I want to speak those languages. No one has ever forced me to learn any language, to be very particular. But the day someone comes to me and forces me to learn a language and forces me to forget my own language for that sake, is something that will become, a conquest or something that will conquer us. And that is currently happening, I think, with English being a supreme language in our country. English is given too much importance here.
No, yeah, in fact, this can be an excuse or a way of starting revolutions or fights, in particular, when someone imposes its own culture and its own values to the other one. Like, this is a problem. Or you accept it, or you collaborate to make your country, to make the place a better one.
Hmm.
And with that, I think we are almost at the end of the podcast. We can still continue talking for hours, as always. But yeah,
True.
there are many other topics we can discuss next time. And yeah, so first of all, I would like to thank you so much, Tvesha. Thank you so much for being here another time, for the second time here.
Thank you so much for inviting me another time. I have a lot of fun discussing these topics with you, honestly, and getting these words, these opinions from an Indian youth advocate to the people, to the audience in Italy.
And so, yeah, I would like also to thank my audience, my community. Like I will come back with an Italian and with a podcast in Italian language, so everyone is happy because when, in particular, when I speak in English with my friends, it's panic, chaos situation. Yeah, so don't forget to follow my pages on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and also follow Tvesha on her social media because she deserves the best.
Thank you so, so much, Mr. Niccolò. And I would love to have another conversation with you like this another time.
Okay, and so be updated because there are gonna be other episodes with other important guests. And grazie a tutti e a presto. See you soon.